back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. We're so happy that you're joining us today to continue the conversation on all things Catholic. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined by Josh Sullivan over here to my left. And you may see Matt VanMilligen here, and a guest between me and Matt today. Matt, this is your lovely wife, Theresa-Marie VanMilligen. Theresa-Marie, welcome to you.
Hello, thank you. I'm excited
Honestly,
to be here.
It's such a joy to have you here today because for those of you people who don't know you, you do such beautiful ministry in our parish community with the RCIA program. You know, you really journey with people, and we baptized people from our RCIA program. Great. You are always a good role model to them. You're a good person of faith. You're a great mother. You're faithful. You're a good prayer. I can't say enough good things about Theresa-Marie. But we brought you on today not because you're a good prayer, but because of your expertise in the field that we're talking about today, which is natural family planning. And of course, you're in the healthcare field. You're a nurse practitioner.
Yes.
And you and Matt have been married for how long?
10 years this year.
Wow. 10 years. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Matt, amazing.
Yeah.
You would find someone like this, right?
Yeah.
And if I can share, you guys have, well, maybe you guys can share. There's great news in your family right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're expecting baby number 5.
Baby number 5.
Yes, on purpose.
On purpose. That's right. Yeah. Baby number 5.
Yeah, I think she just took the crown for segues from you.
So you have 4 boys right now, right? There's Noah, Thaddeus, Samuel, and Michael, and you're expecting when are you due?
End of November.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're talking about natural family planning, and I think this is a beautiful topic that we don't talk a lot about. You, however, both of you talk about this at our marriage preparation programs, right? And the people that you talk to just come alive, like they've never heard of this before or even how to do it, So today we're just grateful that you're going to share with us a little bit about natural family planning, because for those of us who don't know, natural family planning is supported by the church, right? It's probably like the recommended way by the church. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not just for Catholics.
No, and there's a movement towards it because people are getting tired of hormones and birth control and surgeries to try to fix the fertility issue when we can work with our fertility, with our hormones, and have similar or same outcomes. Right.
So for people who don't know, like, what is natural family planning? Like, what is it?
So first of all, I'm not an expert in natural family planning. I don't teach the methods, right. But personally, we've practiced it for the 10 years of our marriage. It's been a real blessing for us. And I think people don't realize it's doable. It's doable, and it's a blessing to be able to do it, that it's not just hardship. And I think sometimes it's people are like, no, that's too hard. You just end up pregnant over and over and over again. Right. And that's just not true. Yeah. So what it is the medical field calls it fertility awareness-based methods, which is a new movement because natural family planning, people just think of the rhythm method, 28-day cycles, day 14 you ovulate, just avoid sex on day 14 and
you won't get pregnant.
I can say sex, right?
It's sex month here on the Catholic Buzz podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. Right.
We don't hold anything back. But yeah, so rhythm method. The rhythm method is you go for a certain amount of time and just don't have sex when the woman could be pregnant.
And
but it's based off math.
Yes, and is based on the women's cycles follow the moon, which is like a 28-day lunar cycle. You always ovulate on the same day, but
that doesn't
any
happen.
Woman who knows her cycle knows that is not how it works. Right. Yeah. Every woman's cycle can be completely different. It can be anywhere from 21 to 42 days. And still be normal. Yeah. So to assume
and things can affect it, like stress or whatever, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the rhythm method, which is, this was invented in the 1960s as a response to when birth control was being made available, and the Catholic Church was kind of recognizing that, we don't maybe agree with this, but also maybe we need to help people learn more about their fertility. Yeah. And so this was the beginning of the research.
And we know a lot more now.
We know so much more now. Yeah. But so now still the medical field sees all fertility awareness-based methods. A lot of times, not everyone, a lot of times they see it as the rhythm method, which was only 67% effective. So 50%, like almost 50% of the time, almost,
Right.
it didn't, you became pregnant when you weren't meaning to, or in situations where maybe you shouldn't become, you medically should not become pregnant.
Right.
So that happened. And then in the 1980s, more research was being done. And the John Paul II Institute started to do research. Like, okay, we need a better way. There must be a better way. There must be more. And what they started to do was do research into women's hormones and how do women's hormones work and what is the trend? What are cycles doing? And the interesting thing is they started to cure fertility issues. As they started to come into realization of what women's cycles are doing, they were able to start fixing things, the women that were having fertility
Amazing.
issues. And so now the Creighton Method is that method that was started by John Paul VI Institute.
Pope Paul VI?
What year was that?
It was not started in the 80s.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, so
That institute developed the
and
the
so, but now we're 40 years on
Right.
from that.
got lots more.
And we have a lot. And now the Creighton Method, which is that method, is 98% effective when used perfectly.
Wow.
Typical use is lower. It's like 90-something. It's still in the 90s%. Because typical use and perfect use are different. Perfect
Right.
use is that you follow every rule exactly every single time. Typical use, people don't.
Yeah.
People aren't
Yeah,
perfect.
which for the record is comparable or better than a
Yes.
lot of the chemical contraceptives.
So
or-
birth control pills
Yeah.
are perfect use, 98% effective, same as Creighton. Typical use in the low 90s, high 80s% effective. Because a lot of women don't remember to take their birth control pill every day. So things like that. It is comparable. Same with the Marquette method. It's 98% effective when used perfectly. Typical use is somewhere in the high 90s.
So you're saying both methods, NFP,
Yeah.
typical use are still high 90s.
Yeah, still effective.
Still effective.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding correctly what you're saying, so natural family planning is sort of like an umbrella term
Yes.
for all these different methods. Is that the right terminology?
Anything that doesn't use active birth control, so vaginal condoms, penis condoms, IUDs, anything like that, if you don't use anything, they call it natural family planning,
Okay.
which is a huge umbrella term, and it obviously doesn't gain a lot of respect because, well, if you use nothing, then you can call it natural family planning,
And you can still get pregnant. Like
And
you don't
you're-
use
like,
any method whatsoever.
which is there's nothing wrong with that. Some
No.
people discern that is the
They're
way their
calling.
family is going to grow. Scott Hahn's family, they
Yeah.
talk about that. That's the way they grew their family. They didn't do any charting. They didn't.
They're going to
they
be
just let
open
it
to life
happen.
as it comes.
Yeah.
And that's I think the important part about why the church would support natural family planning methods, right? Because it's respecting God's design for married love, right? That's why the term natural, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say even the woman's even respecting how he created woman and how he created man and how that goes together. Not only married life, but just his design in general,
Right.
right? Like this is how he means babies to be created, and in doing that, it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really like about fertility awareness-based methods, when you learn from an instructor and you learn the proper way, oftentimes their focus is the couple, right? When you talk about birth control, it's usually about the woman or the man getting a vasectomy, right?
Yeah.
And it's one person. And it comes from that whole mentality of my body, my choice. I'm a woman. I get to decide when and if I get pregnant and how and such. But in a sacramental marriage, you are not one person on your own anymore.
Yeah.
You are to become one flesh. And so
Yeah.
then you have to look at fertility differently,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't mean that he gets to decide when we get pregnant, right?
course not.
But what it is our fertility works together. So I am fertile as a woman. Maybe I'll say all women are fertile a couple of days every month.
Right.
Around 10 days every month, you are fertile. Men are fertile 100% of the time. From puberty and at 75, it declines a little bit.
Right.
Talk to Hugh Hefner, okay? So as a couple then, we are fertile a couple of days every month.
That's right.
Right? And that's what the focus needs to be. And I love that about fertility awareness-based methods because our first meeting, so before we were even married, before we were sexually active, going to that appointment, and he came with me, and she talked about cervical mucus and how you, and it was, and he was like, what?
It's quite the education.
But her point was, this is as much your responsibility as hers. This is not on her to chart, to be in charge of, to do the discernment, to decide when. This is you as a couple asking God for the grace to know when it's time. Yeah. When do we try for family, and when do we need to abstain and avoid getting pregnant? With the caveat that at no point are we saying never again. Right? At no point are we saying, no matter what changes, no matter what God puts on my heart, I'm never having another child. That's not the way Catholic, the sacramental.
You're always open to life. Yeah. Always open to life. Yeah.
Which is what changes things, right? Yeah.
Wow, I just love it because you're right when you point that out, that usually the woman takes on the responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. This just that bond is strengthened when the couple's working together on their fertility. Yeah. I just love it,
and it really changes the struggle, right? A lot of I talk to a lot of women. Women talk a lot about sex when we are alone, and we talk about our marriages.
So do guys.
Yeah. And we talk
differently, but
and we share our struggles, and we share, and so often if the responsibility is fully on the woman to know when she is fertile or when she is not,
there's pressure.
All she becomes is a gatekeeper to sex. Yeah. And then you've changed the view, right? I remember the first time, I hope you don't mind me sharing this. Yeah. We had plans in the evening, and then I had fertile signs, and we had discerned that we are not ready to get pregnant this time. We were spacing out our kids. And I just said, I was like, I'm sorry. We have to change our plans. And do you remember your response? Yeah. Do you want me to say it, or do you want to say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. He just was like, I'm the one that's fertile all the time. So don't apologize. Yeah. We've discerned this together.
Right.
And it was such a relief for me to be like, right, this is us. This is our discernment. It's not like I've decided we can't have sex tonight because I don't want to get pregnant.
Right.
We prayerfully discerned that we're spacing out our children. Yeah. We're not ready yet. And so it's not like I'm depriving him of sexual relations. No, this is what we feel God is calling us to. Yeah. And you make the sacrifice. Yeah. And there is intimacy there, being able to trust the other person to love you in that time of abstaining too, right?
That's right.
So yeah.
So because we talked about a couple episodes ago when we were talking about the beauty of sex, people look at Catholics or people maybe who practice natural family planning sort of as prudes on sex, and that they're only allowed to have sex when they intend to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying here is that's just not the case.
No. And I think there's a real blessing in that, right? Yeah. So the way fertility awareness-based methods work is before you are, so everyone, I'll do this.
Fertility?
You're aware? You are aware of your fertility. Yeah. Exactly. So a woman's cycle goes like this. Estrogen rises. Yeah. LH surges. She ovulates. So an egg is released from the fallopian tubes. Estrogen falls. Progesterone rises. The lining of the uterus is built so that if that egg that's going down becomes fertilized, it can hook into the wall, the lining of the uterus. If no egg is fertilized, if no baby is created, the progesterone falls, the woman gets her period, and the cycle starts over again. Now, as the estrogen rises, the cervix is the entrance into the uterus. Okay, so the cervix and the vagina are different things. Okay. So
Josh learned something today.
That's amazing.
The vagina is the muscle. The cervix is the opening to the organ. So the baby, when you talk about a woman's dilation when
they're having a baby,
it's the cervix that's dilating and shortening.
10 centimeters, all that. Yeah.
Exactly. So when the estrogen rises, a woman's cervix secretes this secretion that's super fertile. And when you look at it under a microscope, it's so cool. I know, I get so excited about this. When you look at it under a microscope, it actually looks
highway.
like a highway, it's long columns like this. Yeah. Versus vaginal secretions, which are just like this. It's a bunch of X's. It's meant to stop semen from going further in to protect the woman from getting an infection. Yeah. Right. Whereas cervical, it's it just sucks the semen right up into the uterus.
Gives it a highway. Yeah.
Exactly. Highway. So that happens for about 6 days before the LH surges. So as the estrogen rises, that happens. Yeah. Then the LH surges, and it causes your body to release an egg. And then the estrogen starts to fall. So the cervical mucus goes away. Yeah. So if you are aware, there are a bunch of things that happen as the estrogen rises. So the Creighton Method, follows just cervical mucus. So all you do is every time you go to the bathroom. Now this is not a teaching. You should get an instructor. But the simple version is you wipe before you pee and after you pee every time, and you just look at the paper. So they actually tell you if you're a scruncher, you have to fold. you have to convert.
and then you can tell from the mucus.
And then you tell from the mucus. And what you're supposed to do is
Yeah.
see if you can pick it up. And if you can stretch it to an inch, it's fertile.
Yeah.
And so basically, as soon as you show fertile signs, if you are ready to get pregnant, every 2 days for that entirety of the cervical mucus being is best chance of getting pregnant until post-peak is what we call it. The peak is when the LH surges. If you're not ready to be pregnant, if you have discerned that this is not the time to become pregnant, then you abstain for those days. Usually it's 5 or 6 in a healthy cycle, 5 or 6 days of fertile mucus, LH surges, and then you count after, because you can ovulate within 48 hours before and 48 hours after the LH surge. It just happens somewhere around there. But semen can stay alive for up to 6 days in the cervical mucus because it's meant to keep semen alive. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to give it the best chance of fertilizing an egg. Yeah. So usually there's around 10 days of abstinence, 10 or 11, give or take everyone, but a healthy cycle. But, so I remember when we went to our marriage preparation course and there was a couple teaching NFP, the woman was fantastic. She was excited about it. And then every time the man would talk, he'd be like, an abstinence, 10 days of abstinence, And I remember being like, oh, sorry, I think I banged the table. I remember thinking if I was interested in that, he would have especially if I were a man, I'd be like, oh, no, 10 days of abstinence. Yeah, no, he just convinced me. But what we have found, and what I have found in talking to so many other couples, when you practice NFP effectively and prayerfully, that because you know there's a period of abstinence coming, then you enjoy the time that you can more. You put more effort into it. And then you have 10 days of abstinence. It's kind of like a honeymoon period because you're like, we can again. Right. It's like a little honeymoon that you can, and you take more advantage of the time. And I think there's a real blessing in that. Whereas I think, I've heard it from so many married couples who can have sex whenever they want. They don't want to because there's more pressure. You can have it any night. So then it's like, okay, no.
It's funny too, because one of the things that I heard from marriage counselors and stuff talking about it was specifically that they would actually, I think there's a couple of celebrities that were talking about it too, that in their marriage counseling, they were given the advice that they should abstain from sex for a week to 2 weeks per month, just to have their relationship grow. And so basically so that people weren't feeling like objects, or people weren't feeling and so just automatically NFP has that built into it, that automatically now your relationship is not sexual for 10 days, meaning it's still intimate. You can still be physical, but it's not sexual, and so it's just a form of intimacy that a lot of people might not actually have otherwise, right?
And I think if it's being taught properly, then that is built in, in our instruction from Creighton, that was actually one of the evenings we went for, I don't know how many weeks. We went for lessons, and one of them was like, how are you intimate without sex? And how do you practice that?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good that it's training for necessary periods of abstinence that happen at other time, like after a woman has as a child, there's a period of abstinence. So if you have that kind of that training, that preparation, or that expectation that there's going to be a period of abstinence, you're prepared. I've been through this obstacle course before, but it's in general, it's actually just really good for communication. It's really good for practicing self-control. It's like the analogy of Lent that we give in kind of marriage prep is like, I like Scotch, so it's like, but I give up all alcohol for Lent. It was like, but that first glass of Scotch after Easter is really, really good. But it's like, you've done this exercise in kind of self-control and virtue, and just really respecting and appreciating, the.
Oh, it's funny you say that too, because one of the things that comes to mind when you're saying after Chrissy had our first kid, our first child, that's when I remember thinking about what a gift for myself and my wife it was to abstain from sex before marriage. Because that was like what I remember Chrissy being, because it was about 6 weeks, right? Yeah. Or give or take, depending. But it's and I remember having that discussion with Chrissy and me saying kind of the same. It's just like, no, we survived 6 years together without sex. Like, this is not, like, 6 weeks is nothing, right? But understanding, like, this is not, like, this is what we choose to do. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, you know? So, and then it also comes into play too, like in other, like not only when you have a child and stuff, but other reasons, potentially like cancer or other reasons why you would have to abstain specific times.
Sick times of illness.
Illness and
COVID.
disabilities. Yeah. When you have to sleep in the basement all by yourself and locked up.
And the other thing that we found is during times, so if anyone's listening and, you know, maybe they already practice NFP and it's a struggle, because it is a struggle for a lot of people. It's hardship. And I think what my prayer for you would be is if you can kind of change your focus, because it's like if you decide to eat healthy and the whole time that you're eating healthy, all you're thinking about is what you're missing out on. You're kind of missing the point of eating healthy, you know, and doing it for the right reasons. You're not thinking about,
Yeah.
And so if you can pray for the grace to change your focus so that you can start to focus on the self-giving part of marriage. And also we realized, so when we were first married in these times of abstinence, I was cold as ice. I was like, don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I don't want to, like, don't, nothing. We're just I'll see you in 10 days. Like, that's how it's going to work. And I obviously ended up hurting him because he was like, I guess you just don't want me anymore. And I was just thought I was being protective of ourselves, of both of us. Be like, no, we'll just like pretend we're roommates for 10 days and then we can get back to life. And it took us a time to realize, no, we need more affection and more flirting and more sexy flirting during more intimacy during periods of abstinence than at any other time, because we can still express our desire for each other, right? We can still say, like, I wish we could.
I want you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty in that. But also then to recognize that if you prayerfully discern something ahead of time, don't drink 2 glasses of wine and rediscern it.
That's really good advice.
That's the discussion you have on the elevator ride from the hotel room rather than
back up.
We went away for a weekend. We had planned, my sister took our children and she was like, go away for the weekend. And then as we were leading up to the weekend, I realized we are going to be fertile on this weekend. And we had Noah, Thaddeus, and Samuel. I was in full-time NP school. Matt was working full-time. We were homeschooling our kids. We had 3 kids, 3 and under. Yeah. And
not a lot of time for yourselves.
Yeah. And so we got in the car and we drove to Toronto. And we started by praying a rosary. And then we were like, okay, like, let's discern this, because we got a hotel booked. We're going away. Yeah. What's the plan here? And we just talked about it, and we realized, like, no, we cannot be open to life at this. Like, we can't be open to a pregnancy right now. Physically, mentally, I couldn't do it. Something would have to give. Yeah. And all of our other priorities were higher. Yeah. And so we had our lovely weekend with no physical intimacy in that way. So we had rules. You can only kiss in the elevator leaving the hotel room. We did not drink. But we went to Canada's Wonderland, and we did a whole bunch of...
We actually went to Wonderland. That's not a metaphor.
Yeah. we had a great weekend away, which
oh my gosh.
It wasn't focused on what we couldn't. It was, okay, so we've discerned this. Now what? Now let's have fun.
And that maybe addresses some of the misconceptions I think people may have about NFP, is that the idea is like, okay, well, if you're not using any, strict kind of contraceptive, they're like, does that mean you need to have a baby every 18 months, every 2 years, like that, indefinitely until you can't anymore? Like, no, that's, you look at your fertility holistically. You look at your openness to life over time. So, is this a good time for us? Do we have the resources? Do we have, because, not all resources are financial, or, that you have limited bandwidth. And if you already have, a handful of kids, that you make these decisions, like what's best for our family right now, and what are we open to down the road?
Yeah, and I think it's really cool. JP2 talks about the fact that so you need to have a grave reason to abstain from to not have more children, and financial considerations are actually not considered a grave reason. Now, I mean, if you're on the verge of poverty, that's different. Yeah. But being like, I would like to be able to take my kids on vacation. That's not actually a grave reason. And you know what he says is so cool. He's like, you are depriving your child of the chance to have siblings. And that's, to him,
Yeah.
that's a grave thing. Like, so how much better would it be for that child to have siblings than for you to take your kids to Disney World every year?
Yeah.
And I thought that was such, like, the importance of siblings is so important to him, that was a grave for him.
Having play dates every single day of their life versus that one chance in a holiday or whatever else. Yeah, 100%,
it's so cool.
100%.
And I mean,
Yeah.
Josh, we come from a family of 9 children, and I think we're really blessed in like 90% of the relationships are really good. No, but like still into adulthood, we have these are my best friends still, and what a gift that is. You know?
Yeah, and it does come down to, like, so for me and Chrissy, we had, for people that didn't know, we had 4 boys, you know, and pretty much, and we were able to space them out, kind of same thing, right? 2 years apart. But then I became disabled for 3 years, and we were on disability. Chrissy wasn't working because she couldn't work, and we were living off disability for 3 years, which was just not possible. Like, we were starving at that point. And so that was the time where we seriously had to consider what we were doing for that reason. And then afterwards, I was getting better and I was able to walk again and all these other things that were kind of going on. And so then we had to, okay, now we can be more open to things, you know what I mean? And kind of be able to change our approach to how we dealt with it, which is, it's a different, people don't realize that the church allows for that. You know what I mean? Like no, this makes sense. You know?
And I think there is I've seen there is a real grace in marriages where you take it seriously and you don't you're not flippant about your fertility, where you discern it. And I would say God is very faithful. Yeah. So at the beginning of our marriage, I just prayed. It's like, Lord, I want to have every child that you have for me. I don't want to miss out on one. But I would like to know that you want them. Like, can you put the desire in my heart? And if I don't discern properly, just make it happen anyway. Yeah. But I just had seen so many friends of mine struggle with unexpected pregnancies. I was like, can you give me the desire first? Yeah. Give me and lead me in that way. And if I don't hear you, I still want the baby. Like, I don't want you to go on my saying no as I'm giving you permission now in like a carte blanche. Yeah. And he's faithful. So we had Noah and Thaddeus, and we spaced them out. You know, we natural family planning. And then I remember Thaddeus was a very easy baby. And when he was 4 weeks old, I was standing there and I was holding him and I was looking out the window, and I remember thinking, I could do this again really soon. I could do Irish twins. And then I was like, whoa, God, if that's you asking, this is me saying no. And I didn't talk to Matt. I didn't take it to prayer. I didn't discern it any further. It was like, the desire was in my heart, and I was like, oh, no. Yeah. Nope. Well, turns out fertility awareness-based methods work best when used perfectly and not typically. And so we had 10 days of fertile mucus, and I was 2.5 months postpartum, and I was like, I'm probably not going to ovulate. We're safe. Let's go. Got pregnant. Yeah. And you know what? My response, I was like, God, you are so faithful because you gave me the desire. I said no, and you were faithful to you knew that my desire. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we named him Samuel, which means asked of God, because he was, even though he was unexpected, even though he was the Irish twin, he was asked of God. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And for those who may take that as kind of looking at the method as unreliable, there's like, we were still operating within the method to say we were aware. Yeah. We were just
technically
open.
We were trying to conceive because we had 10 days of fertile mucus. If you use on a fertile mucus day, you are trying to conceive.
That's it. It's like you don't step onto the ice. Unless you plan on doing a little skating.
Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left here, and what would you say to someone, a couple who's not currently using natural family planning, they're using birth control, contraception, that sort of thing. Like, where do they begin to start to have that conversation with each other? Where do they start, where do they even start to chart and to do all these things that might seem as extra work? Like, how do you start that conversation if you're not currently doing it now?
I'd say start with prayer. First of all, is if you're listening and you have a desire in your heart, that is God calling you. He convicts, right? So start with prayer. Just say, okay, Lord, I hear the desire. Now I'll give it to you because I don't know how to do the next step. Yeah. Then you go on Google and you look up Creighton instructors in my area, or you look up Marquette Method in my area. I would say those are the two best documented and best researched.
Spell Creighton.
Creighton. IGHTON.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Creighton Method would be preferable for those people who have fertility issues. If you have abnormal cycles, if you've been told you have PCOS, if you have very short cycles, if you have abnormal bleeding, Creighton Method, because it has NAPRO technology, which is wonderful. I have progesterone issues. I would have been the person that has miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. And because it was discovered right at the beginning, when we first took the course, we've been able to have, we did have one very early miscarriage, but that wasn't a progesterone issue. So, so that would be the better one. If you have a really normal cycle, if you're the person's like, well, my cycle is 28 days every single time, then Marquette Method, really great, uses LH strips, and it actually measures your fertility that way. It tells you when your estrogen rises. You can use a monitor, you can use strips, slightly more expensive. But the nice thing is, but you can set your watch to it. We use it postpartum now because my cycle's not back to normal, and it just gives peace of mind to be like, when we are fertile and when we're not.
It's the method me and Chrissy use as well.
Yeah. And then once I'm done breastfeeding and my cycles go back to normal, I don't need to anymore. But that one is, so I think most of the women I know use Marquette Method now. In Ontario, there is a doctor who's providing OHIP covered Marquette Method teaching because it's a fertility awareness-based method. The FDA in the States, physicians are supposed to offer it as a natural alternative to birth control, an effective natural alternative to birth control. That hasn't come to Canada as far yet, but the movement is heading that way.
That's great.
So those are the two I would recommend as the highest, as the ones that work best and have the most research, and they are the most scientific.
So these methods, so just to kind of wrap up too, that these are free. I mean, in a way. I mean, you might have to pay for a course or something. But, but in the methods themselves, once you have the knowledge, like once you've gained the knowledge, it's a free form. You're not buying things once a month necessarily, if you don't want to. They are non-chemical.
Yes.
Right? And so they're chemical free, if you will, and you're not putting something in your body that wasn't there naturally. What are the other kind of things that come off the top? I mean,
so there are no side effects.
There's no side effects.
No breast tenderness, depression, low libido, weight gain, which are the most common side effects to birth control. There's no side effects. The side effect is pregnancy. Right? Like, if not used correctly, that is a side effect.
And I think for people who are interested and don't really know kind of where to get started, like I think that's kind of the first shift in mentality that kind of needs to happen. That like fertility is not this,
not a curse.
It's a gift, and like just that shifting that mentality to like looking at your fertility as a couple. Looking at it as a gift within your marriage, looking at ways to work within that to, plan your family, to make those decisions, to kind of discern, and look at ways of being, intimate in the full range of what that word means.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this, because this has been helpful, good discussion. And I'm sure so many people, because we don't hear about this often, and so many people will just find so much grace from what you've shared. And thanks for being so open about your marriage and sharing and embarrassing Matt a little bit. We do that too when you're not here.
It's like marriage prep all over again.
And thanks for sharing. And we're going to continue to pray for you in your current pregnancy.
Thank you.
You guys as a married couple. Okay. If anyone has any questions or comments, we will send them to Theresa-Marie. We will. You can send them to us at the Catholic Buzz Podcast at gmail.com. You can also leave them right on our YouTube channel or our Facebook and Instagram. For Josh Sullivan, Matt, and Theresa-Marie VanMilligen, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on the Catholic Buzz.